cannot take them any further. But to say, okay guys, this was great. What did they do? Did they greet him politely?
No.
They constrained him.
Yeah.
They constrained him. You know, there's a place in this gospel where there's such a constraining. There's a brother traveling 22 hours to come and meet us. And I know, you know, that all over this planet, people are constrained by the sound of this word. There's something about this gospel that is so irresistible that whoever you are, wherever you are hiding, in whatever situation you find yourself in, there is an appeal. Paul says that we commend ourselves to every man's conscience. Every human life has the right to hear this word.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
And so they constrained him. And what did he do? He said, guys, it's very late now, I think we need to go. He went into the house. And they sat around the table and they broke bread. And their eyes were open and they saw him.
Yes.
They saw him in context. The scriptures prepared the place for this revelation. So that through that next meal, the incarnation took place. And they realized this is it. As we eat this bread, as we drink this wine, there is a revelation of Christ in us. And this revelation is permanent. Because Luke writes, he vanished from their sight. And so often we've addicted ourselves to signs and wonders and miracles. And we can't wait for the next one to confirm something. Signs and wonders confirm nothing to the believer.
Right.
They might be a sign to the unbeliever, but not to the believer, because we have the fullness of Christ revealed in us. So he becomes the substance of us. We're not going back into doubt mode like the forgetful hearer. We gaze deeply into the law of perfect liberty. We become so familiar, so acquainted with the face of our birth, realizing that he rescued my identity. He rescued what he formed and fashioned in my mother's womb to be the carrier of his glory, of his image and likeness. So in that reality, he can vanish. You know, you can go through seasons where there's like no goosebumps, where there's like no visible physical feedback, but you still know exactly the same truth. The same truth. The truth is not in question, because Emmanuel can never become less Emmanuel again. The incarnation can never become less incarnated again, because he's embraced flesh. He's embraced humanity. There is no distance whatsoever. But the beauty of it, and I can conclude with this in Luke 24, when Jesus vanished from their sights, what did they go? Did they go, oh, no, he's left us again. He's left us like orphans. You know, let's get sad again. He says, I will come to you. and not for a brief visit, to tabernacle with you, to koinonia with you for all eternity. Nothing shall separate us again. And they were mobilized. They ran back, not because the program said, this is a good time to go and talk in Jerusalem. They've just come from Jerusalem. And they run all the way back. Because they're so driven by the revelation of Christ in them. And so when they got there, the fellowship continues, and Jesus zips back into their fellowship, and there's just this, and there they were. So it's a beautiful context. You know, there's no other context to this. The moment we go into, what's your title, brother? We go into distractions again.
How many people you got in your church?
How many people? I mean, yes, Paul. Imagine Paul. Paul, how many people did you preach to? How many people did you heal yesterday? Paul sits in prison, man.
Just a prison guard.
And he's got a voice that no prison cell, no time zone can contain. He didn't have the laptops, he didn't have internet, brother. He just had a revelation that he knew could never be chained. It could never again be chained. And when Paul writes to the Philippians in chapter 2, verse 12, he says, not only in my presence, but much more in my absence. Paul says, don't build your faith in my slipstream, you know, in the situation that maybe my next visit will do it for you. My next epistle is going to seal it. He says, much more in my absence. Consider the full context and the full conclusion of salvation in you, because it is God who is at work in you, both to will and to do. Both to will and to do. We encourage one another. Even Peter says, even though you know these things, I will make sure that after my departure, you will be able to recall these things. That's why we try and download the stuff and put everything there, so that we can recall these things. And what happens when we recall these things? We are mutually stirred.
Yes,
we are mutually encouraged.
Yes.
Our faith is aroused again. And what was once just a lamp that we held on to, someone else's testimony. Peter says, you held on to my testimony like a lamp because I was an eyewitness of his majesty. I couldn't read or write, not me or any of my two partners. But yet Jesus takes us onto this Mount of Transfiguration, 6 days after I announced him to be the Christ, the Son of the living God. Isn't it interesting? Another 6 days go by, and he discovers the revelation of Simon, son of Jonah. I say you are rock. And he comes to discover his identity revealed in Christ. So he says, I want to make sure that after my departure, you'll be able at any time to recall these things. As a lamp shining in a dark place, until the morning star rises in your heart. And that is the only mandate and mission of the New Testament ministry.
Exactly.
Is the morning star to dawn in the next person's understanding. We're not here to addict people to a ministry so that you can support us and be financially involved with us so that we can have a future. I mean, this would be the lowest ranked thing we could do in ministry. But it's here to empower the next individual, the next person who hears, discovers himself in Christ. If we're here just to impress one another with ourselves, we're back in religion. But we're here to impress one another with one another. Paul says, if you want any competition, here's the only one that's valid. Outdo one another in showing honor. Outdo. Imagine that environment where I'm so safe. I'm not criticized. I'm not gossiped.
Yeah, you don't have to
just
challenge or have
exactly.
to.
I will fold your underwear for you.
So how do you believe God sets pastors and stuff? How do you believe God sets like pastors and stuff, man?
I think they just put the title in front of their own name sometimes.
Like, cause